So glad you made it today. Thanks for taking the effort to be here. I want to talk to you about being brave. Jeff did a fabulous job the last 2 weeks unpacking be kind and be present. Boy, I like that. Sometimes we're just not, we go along our daily routine and we're not really present to what's going on around us. We're not in touch. We're not in tune with even ourselves or people. We're just going from A to B and all the rest of it. But today I want to talk about be brave. We all love stories of bravery, don't we? One of my favorite movies is Braveheart because, it's like there's the Gladiator and there's all these people that have risked their lives, that gave their lives, and even at the end, they're being so brave. I think at a deep level that we all have a desire to be brave, don't we? We tell our kids, going to the dentist, now be brave, or getting their first shot, be brave, or going into the first day of school, be brave now. And then the bullies show up and we have another reality. I think it's easier to be brave in movies than in real life. Maybe not. I think, in my dreams, I am the most brave person I've ever met. I'm the hero. Anybody have good dreams? Come on. Am I the one? How many have a dream where you're the hero? 1, 2, 3, 4, enough of you. And so, those are good dreams, but then I wake up, and I'm not the Braveheart. I'm not the Braveheart that I think I am. I wake up into my reality. It takes being brave to try new things, and a lot of people don't. A lot of people won't try anything new because they're afraid of what might happen. When I think about being brave, I think sometimes it can be as simple as starting to give. Corey was talking about giving to the church and giving to God and putting God first in your finances. And, that takes a step of courage. Deciding to go to school and get a master's degree or a bachelor's degree or, later on in life, deciding to go to school or get a new job. It takes courage and being brave to decide to go to rehab because that's what you need to do. Or get counseling because your marriage needs it. Or because there's things in your life that are upside down and people keep telling you to do that. Or maybe being brave is having that tough conversation with someone. Maybe it's somebody you work with or work for, or somebody that works for you. Maybe it's a conversation with your kids or conversation with your spouse. When I think of people that are at least my heroes, when I think of being brave, I think of a gal named Jackie Pollinger that when she was 18, she gets on a boat not knowing where she's going to get off. And when I think about that, it's one thing to think about where she's going, but it's like this is an 18-year-old girl giving up on the life that everybody around here is choosing and embracing. She's given that up. And she doesn't know where it's going to end, but there's something inside her that says, I got to go. And she refuses to let fear decide, her future. In this. Mother Teresa, goes to Calcutta, India. And I think it's one thing to be brave to go. I think it takes grit to stay. And one of the things that I've really been thinking about lately in my own life and journey where I'm at right now, there's a measure of being brave to enter into an adventure, but then there's a moment of bravery to keep making the decisions to get to the end of it. One of the things that troubles me, I see so many Christian leaders and pastors not finishing well, and they had such a good start. They took a leap of faith to go do something to say yes for God, and then that happens. Somebody else that I think actually that I would mark as being courageous and being brave is Jeff and Natalie Faust. This young couple that has moved from Kansas City to take over a church from someone that's led this for 37 years. To uproot and to come here because they had a dream. And in that dream, they saw themselves coming here and they decided, you know what, we're not just going to let that go. And they're going to be leading our church in the future. And I'm so excited about that. So I think about, what holds us back from the more, from the new, from the outrageous, from the adventure? In a word, fear. Yeah, fear. Let me tell you something about fear. It's a thief. It's a liar. It's a deceiver. It tells you no, and it puts all the negative things in front of you of what ifs and what if that happens, and then trying to back you off. And I don't think fear is just a neutral emotion. I think there's someone behind fear trying to cheat you and I out of the life that God has intended for us. And frankly, I'm sick of it. I've seen too many people turn back because of fear, because of all the obstacles and this and that. I get surprised, and I love to tell leaders, but people generally, it's like, do you realize God never calls you to what you can already do? Never. Never. He always calls you to more. He calls you beyond where you are today in every way. And so many people, it's like you're saying no to life that God has for you. By the way, being brave, just staying with this theme a little bit, being brave doesn't mean fighting every battle. And sometimes people think that, whether it's on the schoolyard or standing up to every issue. But it's understanding what are those issues that you make a stand. What are those times that what's worth fighting for? I think a great example is the Apostle Paul. You know, he was when I think of somebody courageous, man, this guy got beat up. He got, in prison. This thing just happened over and over for the cause of Christ. But sometimes he ran. Sometimes one time in Damascus, they were coming for him and he escaped through a window. And say, well, that's what happened to you, Paul? You used to be brave, and now you're running away. And I think his life tells us there's a time you make a stand, and then there's a time you run for your life. I grew up in an actual very dangerous neighborhood in Los Angeles by a single mom who was gone most of the time. And I had to look out for gangs that were rampant in our neighborhood. And I had a paper route. I remember distinctly one time I was out collecting, and I had a bunch of money on me. And I was usually pretty observant to where to be and where not to be. And all of a sudden, I found myself going down the street on my bike, a little ridiculous bike. But and I ran into the gang, the 13 Gents. Were notorious. And there was probably about 60, 70 of them. And you know what? I didn't have that moment. Bring it on. Here we go. This is time to be brave. You're not getting my money. You're not taking my money, and I'm going down with my money. And it's like, that wasn't my story. My story was I turned the other way, and I tailed it out of there. And that's why I'm here today. I just got to tell you, the people that say, I'm not afraid of anything or anybody, you are stupid. Just tell yourself that I'm stupid. Just say, there's one thing to be afraid, but what do you do with that fear is the point. There's a time to stand your ground. Ephesians tells us, Paul to the Ephesians says, stand your ground. And in 1 Peter, we're told to resist the evil one when he comes. The Bible also says flee immorality. Run from it. Don't try to deal with it. You turn and you run from adultery. You run from impurity and all those things in your life. You turn away. You don't try to fight that one. But we need to have wisdom, and we need to be smart. We need to have people to help us navigate those things. Because, it's like, you don't fight every battle. You don't stand up for every issue. There was a time during the Iraq War. Right after the main fighting had stopped, I was going to Jordan. And on that, within that context, I was invited to speak to a group of pastors in Iraq. And at first, it's like, no way do I want to go to Iraq right now. And why don't they come to Jordan? And so I was doing this meeting in Jordan, and a number of pastors were coming. So I went to my board, and after a while, I just said, you know what? I think I should go. I think I should go to Iraq, and it was in northern Iraq, and meet with these pastors. They're courageous people, and I just think I need to go. And the answer came back, we don't think you should go. We don't think we should lose our pastors or jeopardize, our church over something in Iraq. And what they asked me is a hard question. He says, is this your calling? And I said, well, no, I'm here to serve Afif, our Jordanian friend, and I'm serving his vision. And I realized they were saying, it's one thing for a thief to put his life on the line. It's another thing for me to do that. And so it was really hard because I didn't want to listen to my board. But I chose to. And I went to Jordan, and most of those pastors did come. Sometimes you just need somebody to help you out because you don't know what to do, whether it's taking that new job, go to school, in a relationship. A lot of time we don't listen to our friends and relationships that are giving us good counsel. And we all have, history of that. But I want to talk to you today about facing and moving beyond our fears. Facing and moving beyond our fears. Not letting fears have the deciding factor in what you do or don't do. Because you can be afraid of something because there's something really to be afraid of, but there's sometimes you go past that fear and you step into it anyway, and other times that you don't. Sometimes our fear is really no more than embarrassment or humiliation. You know what I hear is the biggest fear that people have is public speaking, which is what I'm doing right now. And it is kind of fearful when you think about what it is. I'm thinking about, what do you think of me? Am I saying it right? And all these kinds of things. But it's really about worrying about how I'm perceived. What do you think of me? I think that's that fear of public speaking is I don't want to look foolish. I don't want to make a fool of myself. And I'm not going to do anything that will lead me into that. So the answer will be no. There's also the fear of failure, that we don't want to do anything that we could not succeed at the first time around. Isn't that interesting? I used to coach sports when I was a high school teacher. And, there's always those times where it's a first time for everything. And the idea that you're supposed to be good at something right off the bat. But I know some people, they won't ski because they don't think they can be great when they first do it. Or these other things. Or they're afraid of rejection. That if you put yourself out there in some way and then you get rejected, that's devastating. So you're not going to put yourself out there. So you're not going to take a risk. You're not going to take a step beyond where you are because somebody may not like that and push back on you. Frankly, I want to say it like this. Image is way overrated. Because the only one that really cares about your self-image is you. People around you don't care. They don't care about your image, and yet sometimes we live about how we are perceived by other people and almost like a mirror of that, and they don't even think that way about you or me. I love what FDR said. He said the only thing we have to fear is fear itself, and maybe he's right. Maybe we should be afraid of is fear. I want to tell you a story, one of my favorite guys in the Bible, because it is, with Peter, what you see is what you get. I like that. I like that about the Bible characters, by the way. I'm glad they don't gloss over everything. Like Paul was courageous. He was crazy for Jesus, and he was willing to do anything and go anywhere. But sometimes he ran out the back door for his life. So here's a story that Jesus was with the feeding of the 5,000, which was one of the more famous miracles in the Bible. There was tons of people, and the meeting needed to, people were going home. And so Jesus was putting the disciples in a boat, saying, you guys get out of here, and I'll catch up with you later. And then here's the story found in Matthew 14. So immediately after this, after the crowd began to split up, Jesus insisted that his disciples get back into the boat. And that means they didn't want to, by the way. And cross to the other side of the lake. That's the lake of Sea of Galilee, by the way, or Gennesaret. And while he sent the people home, well, after sending them home, he went up into the hills to pray for himself to pray, and night fell while he was there alone, meaning Jesus took a long time to pray. And it was long since, dark. Meanwhile, the disciples were in trouble far away from land, for a strong wind had risen, and they were fighting heavy waves. So about 3 o'clock in the morning, Jesus came toward them, walking on the water. Now, most of us have heard stories about Jesus walking on the water, and it's pretty cool. But Jesus wasn't walking on the water just to walk on water. Miracles aren't just to be done as a show, and sometimes it can become that in certain settings. Jesus walked on the water, but most of the time he took a boat. Most of the time he took a boat. But there was no boat because the disciples took the boat. And so he walked on the water and, hey, watch this. Woo! Oh, yeah. He was catching up with the boys. And then as he does, they're not ready for him because they have no grid. They say, well, I don't know how Jesus is going to catch up. So when the disciples saw him walking on the water, they were terrified. Now listen to this. In their fear, they cried out, it's a ghost. In their fear, they cried out, it's a ghost. When fear overtakes you, you see the worst case scenario. Chew on that a second. When you are overtaken by fear and fear dominates, and as it was to them, you begin to think of the worst possible outcomes to what might occur if you do what you're doing or step toward that. And it rips you off, and that's where it steals the very thing that God may have for you. So Peter's worst case scenario is like, that's got to be a ghost. Come on. Whatever it is. I mean, he went all the way to ghost. That's a pretty big deal. There's a ghost on the water asking you to come. And then so Peter, on this, but Jesus spoke to them at once, hey, don't be afraid. Take courage. I am here. That's a huge phrase for them and for us today. He said, yeah, it's a bad deal. You don't walk on water. I understand that. But don't be afraid. Take courage. In the storm, I am here. That's what you need to know. That's what calms the fear. There's stuff going on, stuff coming at you. Maybe it's a relationship. Maybe it's money. Maybe it's life. Maybe it's health. Maybe it's all these things. Maybe it's old age or maybe next steps or whatever it might be. And so fear comes in. Well, what if this happens? And what if this doesn't happen? And what if and all those things go on. Then you hear that voice from Jesus. Take courage in the midst of the fear. He didn't say pretend it's not happening. He didn't say, hey, guys, there's no storm. What are you thinking? Take courage because I'm here. That's the difference makers, my friend, is understanding that Jesus is in the midst of whatever it is you are going through, whatever is going on in your life, whatever aspect it is that's bringing you fear, that's paralyzing you, that you're dealing with, whatever that fear might be. The antidote for that is understanding that Jesus is saying, take courage because I'm here. I'm not somewhere else. So that's where he starts this. And then Peter called out to him, taking his own initiative here. I think kind of like condescending, frankly. Lord, if it's really you, if it's really you, tell me to come to you walking on the water. And the next thing he hears is, yes, come, Jesus said. Now, at that moment, I might need a moment. I haven't read the manual on walking on water. Never walked on water before. That could be a real stupid thing to do. What if it is a ghost and it's not Jesus? What if I'm talking to myself? What if I'm making this up? Why would I do that? Why would I walk on water? Why would I get out of the boat? This is nuts. And why would I do this? But when he heard something, when he heard the words come, there was something that gripped him. I can't do this. This goes against everything and anything I believe and makes sense, but I'm going because I can't risk that being Jesus asking me to come and I don't come. Hear it again. The bigger risk for Peter was not sinking or drowning. The bigger risk in that moment became, what if it is Jesus calling me to where he is and I don't come? Isn't that powerful? And so here's how it goes down. So Peter went over the side of the boat, and I can imagine the other disciple, where are you going? What are you doing, fool? What are you getting out of this boat? It's a ghost out there. So he went over the side of the boat and he walked on the water toward Jesus, and it's going really well. But when he saw the strong wind and the waves, he was terrified. Fear began to come back in and dominate. He was captured again by fear. Fear took over. Faith came, or this passion to just, wherever Jesus is, I'm going to go. But fear comes back. And then he began to look at the circumstances, and he was terrified, and he began to sink. And I also always wonder what in this, I love prayers that are real, don't you? Some prayers, it's like, come on, who are you talking to? You talking to God or are you talking to us? But have you noticed that how your prayer life changes when you're in it? Anybody ever been in it? You're talking about a Christ desperate moment, and it's like you don't use extra words. And Peter uses no extra words here. It's 3 words. Say, Lord, it's Lord, or save me, Lord. 3 words. I want to get them all right. What I need, saving. Who? Me. And who's going to do it? You. And it was a save me, Lord. Lord, save me. Right then. And I wonder when Peter prayed it. I wonder when he started sinking a little bit. When he's down to his knees. I don't know. I think I can do this. Maybe, up to shoulders. Maybe not. Maybe it was right up there. It's like, Lord, save me. When the water was, overcoming him. But you know what? What happens next is interesting. By the way, when Jesus immediately reached out and grabbed him. Plucked him right there. Aren't you glad in this moment that Peter didn't say, Jesus didn't say to Peter, Peter, man, what are you doing? Your faith, you suck, man. Drown, baby. You were doing good and you didn't make it. It's like, I'm done with you, man. I'm not going to help you. You didn't trust me. It's like, there was none of that. None of that. But he does grab him. And in that moment, in the water, it says Jesus immediately reached out and grabbed him. You have so little faith, Jesus said. He didn't say he didn't have any, or he wouldn't have been on water. He said, why did you doubt? Man, if I'm Peter, I'd say, Jesus, could we talk about this in the boat, please? Think about that. I said, can we get in the boat and talk about this? Right out in the water, he said, Peter, as he grabbed him. You see, when you take a step toward God, and whether it's him or not, there is that moment. It's like he's not going to let you sink. He's not going to blow you off. But like Peter, he just grabbed him and he said, man, you did good, but you didn't do real good. And then he climbed back in the boat and with Jesus. And then the wind stopped. And then the disciples worshiped him. And then they said, you really are the Son of God. It's just like, who is this guy in our boat? We thought you were a good teacher, rabbi, and all this stuff. But wow, you calm this. And, a lot of commentators and pastors, preachers, they really like to play with this one about, Peter started in faith and ended up this way. And, when he got back in the boat, what do you think they said to him? Part of us might think, Peter, what are you doing? You always act like this. You do stupid things at the stupid time. You can't walk on water, and look at you. You're a mess, and Jesus had to rescue you and pop you on the boat. Look at you. Don't you feel humiliated? I don't think they said that at all. I think it probably went more like this. Peter, what was it like, man? What was it like walking on that water? I don't think it was the idea that you didn't make it all the way to Jesus without sinking. It's like, man, you got out of the boat. Here's a reality for Christians today and people today that fear strips us of. Most of the disciples, they never got out of the boat. They were just watching Peter go. Most people will live their life in the safety of a boat rather than walk on water when they might be hearing the voice of Jesus to come to where he is. Just like the story of the eagle. For an eagle, a baby eagle, to live his or her entire life in the nest, wondering what it's like to fly. That's so many people in church life. That's so many churches. There's so many. It's like, what are we doing with that? Let me tell you something. My prayer for this church is that we don't stay in the boat when Jesus is out on the water asking us to come. That this is not a church that plays it safe. that just plays church and does church and goes through the motions and doesn't care about anything but itself, or people that are outside looking in, or people that are lost and people that are broken and people that are outside of faith. That we cannot be a people that are unwilling to take risks, that we cannot live our church life in a nest or in a boat. Wonder is like for more. The stakes are high, my friends. And I don't know what your background is. I don't even know if you're a follower of Jesus yet. But people are desperate for what we have in this church. And they're desperate for the person of Jesus Christ and the life-changing power of Christ in their lives. And people aren't going to get it through osmosis. They're going to get it through your life and through my life. People are desperate for what we have here today. And we cannot keep this to ourselves. It's not just for you. It's not just for me. There are people all over that have no idea that there's a God in heaven who loves them, who wants a relationship with them. They don't believe a church is somewhere that they can come as they are and they'll be loved, not judged and condemned. But they can come in whatever condition that they are, and they can journey with Jesus. And they can be forgiven. And they can have a new life, a new beginning. People don't know that. And they need to know that. You know, one of the things I would ask you to do, Vineyard family, is to do everything you can to get behind Jeff and the team here moving forward. And give your time, your energy, and yes, your money to what this church is about, because there's work to be done. And I'm glad that God has called a leader to lead our church into the future that wants to do something. And I tell you what, Jeff didn't want to live on the boat or in the nest. And I think neither do you. Not really. And maybe we need somebody to help us. Let me give you another story. I've taken too long on that. There's another story. When we think about all this, engaging with people in normal conversation, you don't have to get religious, and you don't have to get so intense, and you don't have to put it on yourself to change somebody's life, because you can't. It's recognizing one simple thing, that as it happened with you, so with other people, God is already at work. You didn't just wake up one day and I want to give my life to Jesus. It always is a result of a journey where different people connecting with you in different points along the way. And there's a great story of Philip and the Ethiopian eunuch that can really help us in this, to understand that our mission is just to recognize that God's already working and believe that. Whether it's somebody you're married to, whether it's somebody at work, whether it's anybody, that God's at work in their life in some way. You don't have to create it. You don't have to make it happen. And you're not going to save anybody. You're not going to convert anybody. Neither should you try. But you can be God's hand extended along the way. Be a link in their chain. So as for Philip in Acts 8, an angel of the Lord came to him. He said, and the angel said, go down south to the desert road that runs from Jerusalem to Gaza. That's all he gets. How's that one? I want you to go down that road from Jerusalem to Gaza. Okay. So he goes. That's obedience. That's being brave. So he started out and he met the treasurer of Ethiopia, a eunuch of great authority under the Kandake, the queen of Ethiopia. And the eunuch had gone to Jerusalem to worship. And he was now returning, and seated in his carriage, he was reading aloud from the book of the prophet Isaiah. What's up with that? And then the Holy Spirit said to Philip, and however that happened, now go over and walk along beside the carriage. It's like God's not giving him much information. It's like, can I have a little more than that? I'm supposed to walk alongside of his carriage. Okay. And that's exactly what he does. And then Philip asked, do you understand what you're reading? Oh, wait, I got to back up. Philip ran over and heard the man reading from the prophet Isaiah. And he asked, do you understand what you're reading? The man replied, how can I? Unless someone instructs me. He urged Philip to come up into the carriage and sit with him. The guy's there reading the Bible. And he has no idea what it means. And Philip is asking, I don't know why I'm here. What is going on here? But he's just tuned in and he's believing that God has something. And all of a sudden he sees this guy reading the Bible. Oh, God's already doing something here. Who would have thought that? And the passage of scripture he's reading was this: he was led like a sheep to the slaughter, and as a lamb he was silent before the shearers. He did not open his mouth. He was humiliated and received no justice. Who could speak of his descendants, for his life was taken from the earth? This was a prophetic scripture in Isaiah speaking of the coming of Christ. Then the eunuch asked Philip, tell me, who was the prophet talking? Was the prophet talking about himself or someone else? So beginning with the same scripture, Philip told him the good news about Jesus. And as they rode along, they came to some water. And the eunuch said, look, there's some water. Why can't I be baptized? This guy's saving himself. He's coming to Christ himself. And Peter and Philip's just watching. It's outrageous. It's like God is doing all of this stuff, and Peter's just coming alongside for the ride. Just connecting some dots for this eunuch. Then the eunuch sees some water and says, hey, is there any reason why I can't get baptized right here and now? Boom. And then it says, when they came out of the water, the Spirit of the Lord snatched Philip away in some way. I don't know if it was like way away or just go. But the eunuch never saw him again. Never saw him again, but went on his way rejoicing. Philip had almost nothing to do with this except go down a road, stand by a chariot. Here's a guy reading it, tell him what it is, and then leave. It reminds us that this is God at work in you and in me and in other people. But we come alongside as his hands extended. So God was at work, and Philip just shows up to connect the dots. He's asking all the questions, why am I here? By the way, FYI, no way was Philip the first. This is really important to get when you're thinking about people around you. Philip couldn't have been the first. Who gave this guy the scriptures? Who got him to Jerusalem? Why would he come to Jerusalem to worship anyone, whether the Jewish God or whatever's going on? So obviously there were others that had been involved in his life along the way before Philip. This was his point. See, we have no idea that in our interactions with people, maybe you're just going to be the first Christian that they don't hate. There you go. That's progress. Maybe that's all you got to do. You're going to be the first one they don't hate or they don't, make fun of. And then somebody else comes along, whatever it might be. But you never know, because you're a link in the chain of someone that has the opportunity to come to Christ. And that's why we need to chill out and dial down and just be real and authentic and just honest and engage people with where we are at, not where we want to be at. Sometimes Christians, they want to engage people around us, whether we have a conversation or whatever, at a level that we're not. People can see through that, for one. And why would you do that? Why would you share the Jesus that you know, not the one that you want to know? You want to open your life up that is, not the life that you want to be. You come as you are, not as you want to be. Does it make sense in this? So people need multiple touches. Let me tell you one thing that happened right here. Right about, I think it was right over here. After church, there was a guy come up, pretty intense-looking guy, tough-looking guy, and he had tears in his eyes. And he's just talking, and so I'm having a conversation. So who are you? Hi, I'm Rick. And, it's your first time in church. Yeah. And it's just like, so we're going on. And finally, he kind of interrupts me. He says, excuse me, but is there anyone here can help me give my life to Jesus? It's like, yeah, I think we could find somebody. I'm just talking. I have no idea. God's at work in this guy. And I'm at the end of the chain. And I didn't think about that then, but I thought about it now. I wonder if it was 20, 30 people that had been engaged in his life, here and here and here and here. And God was working and working. And then he shows up here. I want to give my life to Jesus. Please help me. Yeah, we can do that. Now, it's not always going to be like that, but sometimes you might be that first link or the last link. But if there is a link, and if you look at your own life, my friends, that's the way it happened with you. Who were the people that introduced you to faith, that listened to you, that talked to you, prayed for you? that involved themselves in your life? Who were the people that were the links in your chain of coming to faith? It would be a good exercise to write them down and not forget that, because usually after we come to Christ, we look back and we realize, oh, wait a minute, you were involved then and then and then. See, I had no God in my life. I didn't grow up in the church. I thought all of it was a bunch of bunk. But after I came and had an encounter with Jesus, I began to realize, oh, God, oh, you were there. And that person, oh, that was you. Oh, that was you. And that was, are you with me here? It's all the pieces were coming together. Coming in a relationship with Jesus Christ is absolutely a journey. It's not just an event. There is that moment of crossing over a line of faith, of surrenders. Yeah. But there's journey of surrender and surrender and surrender and surrender based upon your understanding. Now, this is an issue that I have with people, with Christians. They just want you to get it. Here it is. Will you, won't you? No, people don't get married like that. You don't usually go up on somebody on the street and say, hey, here's the deal. Will you, won't you? There's a process, there's a relationship in all of this that people go through and need to go through and should go through to have authentic faith. And we want to honor that, but engage that. Let me close with Carl Medeiros in his book, 42 Seconds. I hope you've gotten that book. If not, get it. It's very helpful and practical. Crazy Carl. Here's what he said about this, about worrying about being foolish, and worrying about our image, and worrying about how people are perceiving us. That's just got to die. But he says, let's care more about others than how we are perceived. Ask more questions than give answers. Let's ask Jesus to set us free to be the best version of ourselves for the sake of others, even if it means being fools for Christ's sake. Our part is to show up and be alert. Or like Jeff said last week when he was teaching us, be present. Just be present with people around you, with what's going on in your world. And understand, it's the love of Jesus that drives us to people, not fear away from them. And it's the love of God that he has for you that can drive you beyond your fear into something new, into something outrageous, into something beyond what you have right now, to take that step of faith. And knowing that if you fall flat on your face, that God's not going to laugh at you or judge you, but he's going to pick you up and he's going to say, let's go again. And for some of you in this room today, the word of the Lord to you, get up and let's go again. Because some of you have fallen on your face in arenas of your life again and again and again. And some of you have stayed there. But Peter called out, help me, Lord. Save me from this, Lord. So it wasn't like, there was a part that Peter had in it, and the only one is like, help. I don't want to drown. I don't want this to be the end. And so for you, if you're in that place, get up and call out to God for his mercy, and I guarantee his hand will come right there. Right there. And when you know that he's there, that fear will go and not control you and give you the worst case scenario anymore. Amen? Amen. Some of you live in this. Fear, it will not be our master. Fear will not tell you who, what, and when about your life. About your life. Who took a risk with you? Somebody did, or you wouldn't be here. There's somebody in your life right now you probably need to have a conversation with. Who is that? Who is that? Let's stand.